I'm meteorologist Ryan Hanrahan. Wow, what a change to the forecast with this storm for Monday. It's looking like we could see a major snowstorm here in portions of New England down into the mid-Atlantic. Quite the change from what we were looking at yesterday. So I want to dive right into it, show you what we're talking about here. And I'm going to start off by looking at the setup. This is up in the jet stream, which will give us a pretty good indication of why this storm is forming and what the changes have been. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to advance the clock here. This is the GFS computer model, which shows a very, very deep trough in the jet stream developing, and this is what we call a negatively tilted trough. And a negatively tilted trough means that it's sort of angled from southeast to northwest, and that allows the storm to develop off the coast of the mid-Atlantic and then continues off to the north. And this is just a classic look for a very, very powerful storm here across portions of southern New England. Now, the question is, how far north does this get? And it's a really complicated setup. And the reason why it's so complicated is not only do we have this storm forming here with this dip in the jet stream, but we also have this second little kicker, so sort of what we call it, behind it across portions of the Midwest that dives in. And all of this is, there's a lot of interplay between all of these things, and that's why a situation like this is giving the computer models a really tough time trying to figure out exactly where the storm develops and how far north does it get as opposed to how far east does it get. Does it get pushed offshore, or does that trough sort of drag it in? And that has been the issue with this storm so far, and why it's been such a challenging one to forecast, why we've seen so many changes here. So that's one way of looking at this from a jet stream perspective. I'm going to dive in a little bit closer here and show you what's going on. Let me change this here. I'm going to go to the northeast. Let's try this one more time. So head over to the northeast, and there we go. So let's take a look at this. This is still going to be the GFS computer model. What I'm going to do here is, let's do this. All right, so let's watch the storm as it develops. Here it comes to the north. There's the center of the storm off the coast. You can just barely see it here on the bottom of the screen. This is the track of the storm, and it's pretty far offshore, and that's why the main thrust of precipitation sort of hugs the coast. The question is going to be here with this thing, does the whole storm wind up trending farther north and west? We've seen this thing move 100, 200 miles farther north and west. If that were to continue, you'd be talking about near blizzard conditions across southern New England back to New York City and New Jersey. If it stays this far south, it's going to be a little harder to do that. Let's switch this over to a different computer model. I'm going to show you the European here, and you can see the European is very close. We've got decent agreement there, not too far off. With the track, you can see the storm developing off the portions of Maryland and New Jersey, and then continuing up to the north. To get the major snowstorm in Connecticut, I'm talking about feet of snow, you'd want to see the storm hugging a little bit closer to Martha's Vineyard. I don't quite see that right now, but it does get awfully close. And one other thing that I'm going to look at here, which is always pretty instructive, is what's going on up about 10,000 feet above our heads. And our biggest snowstorms happen when you get a low to form at 700 millibars. That's the pressure level, about 10,000 feet. A low to form to our south and sort of goes right over us or just to the south. You want to be within about 100 miles of it. And that low here is pretty far to the south. And so on the northwest side of it, that's where you can get some of the heavier snowfall. And it's close, but we'll see what happens. And if I were to show you what this looked like 12 hours ago, that low was off the screen. So it's coming closer. So the northwest fringe here is where you're going to get the heavier snow and where you could get some really, really dramatic totals. So let's take a look. Speaking of totals, let's take a look. I can't do that. Let's go to 24-hour here. I'll do 48. So this is a look at the European model. How much precipitation does it have? About an inch from Boston on south, about a half an inch to 3/4 of an inch here in Connecticut. Now consider that we're talking about a 10-to-1 ratio generally of liquid to snow. So that 10-to-1 ratio could give you 5 to 10 inches here in Connecticut off the European model. The European model yesterday had 0. So it's changed quite a bit, and that heavier snow goes back to New York City and the Jersey Shore. Let's take a look at the GFS. Obviously, much more heavier precipitation for sure. One thing that it is showing is a little bit less in the valley, and that's a possibility. We might have to deal with some dry air in the valley from Hartford on north to Springfield. That is always something, a factor. But this is looking at about an inch of liquid, about 10 inches or a foot for most of Connecticut, and then close to 2 feet down toward Buzzards Bay, down 2 feet for the Jersey Shore and portions of Long Island. This is obviously a really substantial snowfall. We can look at some of the other computer models as well. The Canadian, a little farther offshore, but still quite a bit, about 5 to 10 inches. And let's swing this over. I want to show you the AI models because the AI models have done really good. This is the AI Euro. Switch this over if I can. This is the Euro AI model. This is a 24-hour precipitation showing anywhere between about half an inch and 1.2 here in Connecticut. So that would be 5 to 10 inches of accumulation. A lot, that's a good number. That's a decent bit of precipitation. The other concern we've got here, and one more thing. Let's go to this. I didn't have a lot of time to prepare, so we're sort of doing this on the fly here. This is a look at the Euro ensembles, and what this is showing us is every possible location in the European model for the low Monday morning. This is about 10 a.m. Monday. What you can see here, there's still a lot of spread. It's about 100 miles from west to east and north to south where the storm could be. If we get a storm up here on the northwestern fringe, that's a foot to 2 feet of snow across most of southern New England. If it's farther to the south and east, it's going to be less. But the trend has been to push this all closer to the coast. Now, does that trend continue? Does that storm keep coming farther north and west? If it does do that, then we're talking about a blizzard. If it stays where it is now, it's more of a fringe glancing blow for portions of Connecticut, but a decent storm nonetheless. If it goes to the south, or if it begins to shift a little farther to the south and east, if it's where some of these other members are, farther to the south, then it's a much different kind of storm, much lighter storm here locally. So that's what we're looking at. I'll show you the GFS too, just for the heck of it. And you can see the GFS has some members here. If you look closely right there where these dotted lines intersect, this is what we call the benchmark. This is 40 degrees north, 70 degrees west. And for us here in Connecticut, to get a historic storm, you want to be inside the benchmark. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 30 or so of the GFS members have that. Others are close, and then there's some stragglers out to the east. So still some questions here as to just how close this thing gets. But obviously the trend has been dramatic. One other thing I can do, look at the probability of getting more than an inch of liquid. An inch of liquid here would be about 10 inches or a foot of snow. And the odds are close to 50% down in London, but only about 10 to 20% in the Hartford area. So lower. But again, this thing keeps trending. So does that trend continue? Here's the European odds of getting more than an inch of liquid, about 10% in Hartford, but up to 40% or so down toward New London. And then the odds are higher, closer to 50-50 out toward Boston and certainly out toward the Cape. So all that, putting all that together, we're talking about a really substantial storm here that has the potential to produce quite a bit of snow. Let's see if one other issue with this thing that I'm going to show you here. This is a look at what the AI European model, and the areas in white here. These are winds, very, very powerful winds. These are winds that are above about 65 knots, 70 knots at about 2,000, 2,500 feet up. And so there is the concern here on the northern fringe of this storm that we could see some really powerful winds. Winds maybe gusting up to 60, 70 miles, let's say 60 miles an hour as the storm passes by. So this is going to be one of the storms, not like the storm we had a couple weekends ago where there wasn't much wind. This one could be a big wind producer. So something that we're going to have to watch with this thing. And I pulled up a sounding here. Zoom this out a little bit so you can see it. This is a sounding for Bradley Airport. And I'm going to advance it here. Let's see if I can see it. Yeah, there we go. This is a sounding for 7 a.m. Monday, and it's showing the potential for some really strong winds, even in the Hartford area. So that's a concern. And, could we get blizzard conditions out of this? Yeah, it's a possibility. So we'll have to see. So again, a really interesting storm here. We've seen a lot of changes with this one. It's been really challenging to forecast, that is for sure. And it is looking like we could get a very significant storm. We just need to see how this changes. And I'm going to just, for one more time, throw on the track. And you can see this is the expected track of the storm. And where does it get that heavy precipitation? I think south of Boston's a really good bet. What we wind up getting in the Hartford area, a bit more of a question. Sometimes when we're on the northern fringe, we deal with some dry air coming down the Connecticut River Valley, which can lower totals in Hartford County, but keep them higher elsewhere. So lots to figure out here. Lots of questions we've got with this system. But again, the potential for decent snowstorm. We got winter storm watches in effect for southern Connecticut. And again, the potential here for quite a bit of snow. Right now, if I were to ballpark something, we'd be talking about 6 to 12 south and east of I-84, 3 to 6 to the north. But because we've seen such dramatic changes, I think it's a pretty low confidence forecast. We could see some big changes either way. Do we get another little shift to the northwest? Yeah, if that happens, we're talking about 1 foot to 2 feet of snow. If we get a subtle shift back, was this an overcorrection? Can we get a shift back? That's possible too, and that's why you can't expect the trend to continue all the time, because sometimes you can go in the opposite direction. So it's going to be an interesting one. Monday looks like the worst of it, and we'll keep you posted on all the models here, sort of model mayhem, I guess you could say, with this system that's moving in. So looks like another snowstorm. How much we get, still a bit of a question, but I think we'll have a much better idea by tomorrow. We'll be able to see, like, all right, do these trends continue, or do we sort of come to a sort of get to a steady state, or slowly move this thing a little bit farther offshore? We shall see. So anyway, I'll keep you posted. I'll update this tomorrow on Saturday, show you what the models are showing, and we can geek out about the weather a bit more. So hey, thanks for watching.